Hey, everybody. Welcome. The Abel Marketing Facebook Live for Monday, January the 24th, 2022. Here we are, just checking in on what's happening this week. We got our guest coming in soon. It's Kendra Vyse from Accounting by Design Consulting. Now we're going to have a little chat with Kendra. Then we're going to move to, the usual chit-chat kind of stuff that we normally do. So we're just waiting on Kendra to show up and see how things go here. I'm just gonna look at my Facebook settings, and there we have Kendra. I'm just gonna let her into the chat. All right, give me a second here, folks. All righty. Alrighty, there we go. Welcome.
Thank you.
Is your microphone working? I think it is.
It should be. I hope so. I set it to be the right one. So.
Yeah, I think you did. It's a little bit different using Restream.io, but I think it's ultimately a little sharper looking and a little bit more, a little fancy, and you can do proper Facebook Lives rather than just stuff just trashing, right? So it's a little bit of a delay, but we can live with a delay for now. So why don't we do this? Yeah. You go ahead and you tell us how you got started with Accounting by Design Consulting, and I've got a couple other things to ask you. Just in terms of the actual, there's lots of stuff about, obviously, that I know that our guests don't know about, like your background and how long you've been doing accounting and bookkeeping and all that kind of cool stuff. So let's get started with that.
Sounds good. So, I'm recently in the middle of rebranding. So Accounting by Design is my old company. Yeah. Clear Direction Advisors, right, is my new company. Right. But I've been in business for myself for a little over 9 years now.
Okay.
So
a long time, almost a decade.
Yeah. This is the third name change.
The third name change, but now you found the right name.
I found the right name. It, came about because of a move halfway across Canada and to add some additional services from my background. So, I mean, I started it. And the reason for Clear Direction Advisors is that is the whole purpose of me being in business, and why I started my business was to help people have clarity with their accounting and bookkeeping and having a good understanding of it. And then with adding the business planning aspect, business plans give you a direction, right? And they give you clarity as well. So it all kind of meshed together and works really well.
It's because heaven knows it's important to have clarity about money.
You know what? If you don't know where your money's coming from and you don't know where your money's going, you've got a problem.
Right. I would think so. I would think so. Not just in a business, but just in, life in general. So 9 years with Clear Direction Advisors and Accounting by Design Consulting. Wanted to ask you a little bit about you've already elaborated on it, but it's still kind of important for people watching to know, what is your background with accounting and bookkeeping? Like, how did you get started?
Well, and that's the funny thing. I've actually been doing accounting and bookkeeping in some form or another for over 20 years. I'm going to date myself there a little bit.
That's okay.
For over 20 years. But I did start working for my dad. And I started when I was a teenager. So he had his own accounting practice. He was a designated accountant, and he had his own accounting practice for over 30 years. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So you have lots of like, you've been involved with crunching numbers for a while.
Absolutely. So he needed some help. It was a good way for me to make some money. And I started off with boxes of receipts and an Apple IIe and ledger book. Nice. And categorizing receipts, right? So that's how I started. But at the same time, I had been involved without as you get older and you think about it, I'd been involved in entrepreneurship my entire life because my grandfather owned his own business. He was a cabinet maker and contractor, and I grew up with him, working in his garage and going to job sites. My father, like I said, when I was about 8 years old or so, he decided to start his accounting practice. And a few years after that, my mom started a store called the Christmas Gallery. So
quite a bit of stuff going on there.
A lot of stuff going on. And then, and then so that's why I say entrepreneurship's in my blood, right? Like I've done that. And I mean, even my granny, who didn't actually have a business or anything like that, she was still entrepreneurial, because you can actually find somewhere, I know we've got it on paper, she was one of the first 2 women streetcar drivers in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Cool. That's
right?
Really cool.
So everybody in my family,
there's some really cool stuff going on.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
that's interesting. Okay.
Then I went to university, and after deciding that I hated lab work in the first year, first term, I decided I absolutely hated lab work, and that was not going to work for my chosen career path. But I loved my intro to business. So that just, I started taking finance and decided to go for my CMA designation. And so I have a lot of educational background from that. And I continue to do professional development and learning. And then from the career path, I've been a staff accountant for a few different businesses. I've been a recruiter for finance and accounting. I was a software consultant for accounting software, and I adjudicated business loans, right? So with all of that, I also had educational pieces teaching people how to use their accounting software. How did you do bookkeeping? How did you do accounting? How do you read the statements, analyze the statements, and also how do you prepare a business plan, right? What makes a good business plan especially when it comes to financing, but then how does it also give you that direction and the step-by-step to actually use it in your business, not just, here, I need money, but it has to be a plan that gives you the steps going forward as well.
Okay. So that's kind of interesting then. So shifting gears a little bit then, you sort of gave background, talked about different parts of your career, different things that you've done. So how does that translate into when you're looking at a client and a new client, what things are you looking for to indicate that a client's a fit for you? And this could be a 2-part question, because maybe you can elaborate a little bit on, a small business that is running and it doesn't really have a clear idea of their accounting practices. What do you look for? And then how do you basically onboard a new client or enter into a discussion with that client where you're going to end up working with them?
Well, I know a lot of people talk about niches, right? The industries that you work with and all that stuff. But because of my background, I don't have a particular industry niche, right? I currently work with, tradespeople, people who do manufacturing, retail stores, service-based businesses. I have not-for-profits, right? So to me, the accounting side, and it is partly because of my background, the accounting is all the same regardless of what your industry is. There's just, certain things, like if it's not for profit, there's, certain grants and things like that versus revenue profit streams and stuff.
Okay.
But that's one of the things that I'm looking for a small business owner. For my ideal client is somebody who, like you said, doesn't quite get their accounting right. They want to have some education and knowledge about what do their numbers really mean. But they're also a little bit technically savvy, because I do work with clients across Canada, even though I'm based in Nova Scotia. I have clients all across Canada, all the way through to BC. Right? So
from Nova Scotia, and you were where before that? You told me you were in
Manitoba.
Winnipeg, right?
Yeah. Okay. So when we packed up and moved last year, and we moved halfway across the country.
Wow.
That was awesome. An adventure in itself.
I'm sure we could do an entire session just on that alone.
We could also probably do an entire session on working and running a business from a semi-truck.
Oh, nice. That's another. We'll have to have you back on, and then we can talk about that. So, so really then basically, go ahead. Just sort of finish elaborating on what's happening then when you're looking at new clients or things you're going to end up working with people? Because I think that's really crucial that people understand, both the people that end up having you work for them, and also for anybody who's running a small business, it's really crucial, even if you say that you don't have a niche, that you yourself have a good understanding of what you're looking for in working with a client, right? Because it's pretty important.
Oh, it's very important. And like I said, it's that the industry itself, like I said, isn't important, but that thirst for knowledge, right? And thirst for understanding is really what I look for people that I want to work with. And the technically savvy part comes into play is because my clients are across Canada. I use mainly QuickBooks Online. I do have some people on Wave Accounting, but it's just not, it's for very, very small starting out businesses. But we use functionality within QuickBooks Online to capture receipts and upload receipts, and there's bank feeds and all of these things to make things easier. And we also, can use HubDoc, which allows you to capture capture receipts and do things like that, and capture documentation, and things like Dropbox as well. So you have to be willing to do that, right? If you're not willing to, go to Staples and snap a picture of a receipt, well, it's not going to work, right? Like that's kind of integral to the way I've built my business. But there are reasons why I've built my business that way, not only to open the geographical people that I can work with, but also because there's an advantage to having those electronic copies of your receipts attached to your accounting transactions, right? So it gives, you might have something from 2-3 years ago and you're going, ooh, I don't remember what that was for. Even if you have really good notes, you may still not 100% remember. So you can actually pull up the receipt. It's also, if you ever get audited, knock on wood, no one wants to get audited, but it does happen. You can now sit there and go, oh, here it is. And as long as it follows CRA's requirements and regulations for an electronic receipt, right, they're going to accept that receipt as backup, because let's be honest, you go to a lot of these places and those thermal receipts they're faded within a couple of months. So you now have a backup so that CRA can't come back to you and say, oh, that's not going to work, right? You don't have a copy of it. It's all faded. We can't read it. So yeah. And same thing, if you're not working with me to do your income taxes, it's also very easy to invite another accountant in and have them come in, and they can do their own reviews of things and go, and if you've bought an asset, or you have a very large, say, supply purchase, they can actually go in, open up the receipt and see what it is, right? So it has some definite advantages to doing that. And so that's really what I look for, is somebody who's willing to put in that little bit of time to do that and is technically able to do that. But also wants to know, when I've done the month-end books or the quarter-end books, we'll sit down, have a conversation and go, okay, this is what it means, right? Here's where your money's coming in. Here's where your money's going out. And I'm so sorry, my dog has his dog toy.
That's okay. This is the reality of Facebook Lives and, conversations and business in 2022 because of the pandemic, working from home, working remotely, right? So pets in the background is not a big deal. I mean, that's just kind of expected, as long as there's no children like throwing stuff directly at the camera. I mean,
but I don't have that problem. But I mean, this has actually been my reality. When I started my business 9 years ago, I've always worked from home, right? So the pandemic in that way didn't really affect me much. It's kind of normal, just a lot more online stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things, right? It's just, we've gotten so used to it. And the next thing I think I would ask you is, this is a very loaded, probably massive question. Probably would take several days or hours to answer. And when I was thinking of stuff I can ask you, is like how do you tell small business owners to get started with accounting and bookkeeping? Like maybe they came from another business where they did that kind of work for another company, but now they run their own company. What do you tell them? Like, what do you say? Like,
it can be loaded, and a lot of people, first of all, aren't numbers people. They don't want to even think about their accounting, which is, if they really don't want to do that, then I suggest to them to, budget it in that you can actually work with someone like me, even if it's not me, but someone like me, a bookkeeper, an accountant who's going to help them and help them understand what they can and can't write off. Right.
Yeah, I think that's really crucial for people, because I hear a lot of people say, I've probably done it when I started Abel Marketing even a couple of years ago. And I know from I've had you help me with my accounting is people really think that they think they can just write off something. And it's like, well, I think if you're audited, or even if you're not audited by the CRA, it's pretty clear what you can and cannot, sort of write off or justify as a business expense. Like $1,000 of lunches is not going to work.
No, like, especially if you've only got about like $30,000 of income coming in, right? Revenue coming in. It also, but to be honest, that also depends on your industry too, right? Like that, like you said, it's kind of a loaded question. But that's one of the things is I tell people to educate themselves, right? So
I think that's a really great point, is to tell people to educate themselves. But as we've talked about, you and I before, they have to want to do that.
Yes. If
right.
You
They
don't,
can't just if you're not motivated, you're not going to do it, basically.
No. And the other thing too is be open to listen to those experts, right? Wherever you're getting that knowledge from, make sure that it's a reputable source, right? Bless you.
Thank you. Sneezing on Facebook Lives. Oh, I guess that kind of allowed, right?
Yeah, of course. But yeah, make sure that whoever you're talking to really does know what they're talking about, because I've run into a lot of cases where somebody's gone, like they're great. They've decided they want to hire a bookkeeper, but they go and hire the bookkeeper for $15 an hour, right? Or they go and hire someone from outside of Canada, and that person maybe doesn't understand our tax laws, right? So
that's crucial, especially business.
Yeah, it is.
Right? Like that'll be a huge nightmare for you down the road.
Oh, absolutely. Right. So, and, and just like sort of everything else out there with the, the rise of social media, you can go and find stuff, but it doesn't mean it's accurate. Right.
Yeah.
So it's definitely go educate yourself, or find, like I said, somebody that you're comfortable working with, is that you trust. Because I'm not a fit for everybody, and I know that. Which is why I try and have a lot of like bookkeepers and accountants in my network, so that if I'm not a fit for somebody, I can go, hey, here's a couple of other people that maybe is going to be a better fit for you. But those are all people that I've spoken with and talked to, and made sure that they do know what they're talking about, right? But at the end of the day too, what I'll tell people is the easiest way to think about it, and this is with a caveat, of course, because it doesn't work for everything, but if you're spending money specifically to make money in your business, there's a very good chance you can write it off, right? The biggest things that you can't are meals and entertainment have 50%.
Which is really important to know, because I think a lot of people think they can just do whatever they'd like, right? And they can write off whatever they'd like. Well, right? They can just go, okay, like I'll just write off this meal, or like I'll write off $1,000 to food and entertainment and just say it's business related. And it's like, well, I could see it. I could see it on occasion, but I couldn't see it long term.
No,
or I couldn't see it like for like months and months and months of like expenses.
Well, no, and again, that depends on your industry. There's some industries that are it's not unusual to have high meals and entertainment expenses, because that's part of how you, keep and retain all of your clients, and even, get new clients. And it's expected in certain industries, but you still can only write off 50% of it. It doesn't matter. Right. And it must be business related, right? Like you can't just sit there and go, oh, I'm going to go grab a coffee for myself and go, hey, that's what it is, right?
Well, it's funny, but it's true, right? Because you've probably gone to somebody's business and said, okay, I need help with my bookkeeping for the end of the year. And you're like, oh, goodness, this is a mess.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like when you are doing a meal, you have to actually write down who you're meeting with, why you met with them, right?
So that's crucial information, right? It's not just,
well, it is. Yeah. So it's not only for your sake, but it's also so that a CRA asks, right? And if you have too many meals and entertainment expenses, right? There's also a very good possibility if CRA does ask, they're going to go, okay, well, you met with this person. Well, if it's too much, we're going to go talk to that person, especially if it's somebody that you meet with all the time. Right.
Yeah.
So they're
it's one
better.
of those things I think people don't realize.
Yeah. And
I think they think it's a guaranteed thing. Right.
Well, I mean, I work from home. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I go through a lot of tea. Right. I mean, you can see one of my collection of tea mugs.
Nice.
I can't write that off. Right. I don't have clients coming to my house. So, or my office space or any of that stuff. Cause I do have a home-based office as well. I can't write off my tea. Right. It would be nice because heck, I mean, said I go through a lot of tea, but I can't. If I had clients coming in and meeting with me and I was offering them tea and coffee and things like that, or if I had an outside of the house office and there was a, again, coffee machine there for staff and clients, then yes, it becomes a business expense, but I can't just do it because I feel like having tea. And even then you got to be a little bit careful if it's for staff and stuff like that, how much you're going through and stuff. Vehicles are another thing that people have, some questions around. And I mean, I could, again, totally talk on that forever. I do have some videos actually on that one.
Right.
A lot of these I do. But that's one that, you need a vehicle log is the main thing. How use of home, if you're a sole proprietor, is another one that you really need to know what you can write off and what you can't, and how to actually record those things.
Right.
And then probably the other one that I see a lot and get asked a lot is clothing. And essentially, if you don't have your logo on it, or it's very specialized, and I mean, the biggest thing for that would be things like, an arborist. and I say that because my dad actually had an arborist, like it's and safety equipment, stuff like that, right? Because most people aren't going to go walk around in, a big, bright yellow fluorescent jacket, right? Not usually the fashion statement. So like I said, those are the ones that I get asked quite a lot.
Okay. Yeah, let's just wrap up because we've got a good 20 plus minutes of conversation and content and info, and I'm going to follow up with you and post the video and all the info from the live stream because there's a lot of valuable information in there, and really, 5 questions in 20 minutes, but it's a lot. It's a lot of information to digest when you think about how critical, things like accounting are. And I never realized it until I started Abel Marketing a couple of years ago. And that's why I ended up reaching out to someone like yourself, because I'm actually interested in making sure that I do it correctly. And, it's really valuable information, right? It's not just like, if you're really going to be serious, it's not just stuff that you're supposed to be doing for fun, right? It's supposed to be, it's really critical to the survival of your business. Right. Well, so it's just like, it's not really messing around. So thank you for the time. We appreciate it. We'll have to have you on maybe again as a guest, just for fun, as a cross Canada adventures guest. That would be good. That would be good.
Yes. Well, I said,
right?
I did that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting to hear that kind of stuff, but that's what people do. I think sometimes now, in the age of the internet and technology, they can run a business remotely like that. They don't need to sit in an office in downtown Winnipeg or when you're living in Manitoba and run it, right? They can run it. As long as you got an internet connection and you got a good computer, you can do a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And and I mean, and I guess that would be my biggest thing for people to take away, right? And just to sort of wrap it up is know your numbers, right? Like it is critical to know your numbers because you need to know if you're making money.
Kind of important.
But also knowing, let's say at the beginning, where your money is coming in from, where it's going out to, and find somebody that you trust that you can work with to get your questions answered.
Okay. Well, thanks, Kendra. It's good to chat with you. We'll chat with you soon. Take care.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.